7 o'clock, I'd like to open the meeting of the Port of Siuslaw Law Commissioners for Wednesday, October 18th, 2017. We are in Mapleton at the high school. Thank you, Mapleton. Looks like all commissioners are present. First item on the agenda will be approval of the agenda by consent. Public comments. Do we have anybody signed up, Dina?
Yes, David Sweeney.
Gosh, are you from Mapleton now, David? You live in Mapleton now? Just a joke.
I did.
We
Good to see you
did.
here.
We did.
We did, we had property next to it.
Okay, I'll try and keep this short, but a number of people that live down on the boats come to me and talked and asked me if I would come to the meeting and see if there was any way that liveaboards could get a post office box at the port. Okay? Now, some people, you might not
Receipt in
realize
there.
that if you live on a boat and you're at the port, you're homeless, because you don't have an address, okay? So for social security and bank statements and things, I don't want the port to be overwhelmed with junk mail by any means, okay? But I think that that would be a very simple courtesy for the boat owners that live here, live at the port. Okay? Now, I'm gonna go ahead from there, I'm gonna go back to when Mr. Luskin wrote a letter to me and told me that I was being put on month to month, okay? Month to month. So if he wanted to kick me out of here, he could. Now, in that letter, or I will challenge you guys to find and show me anywhere where it says that that was going to end in September. That was there till they got rid of me. Okay. But now, Kelly comes up and goes, oh, well, that was due to end in September. That's not true. I know it and you guys know it. And I think that since then, I've had a lot of unexpected bills. And I'd like to be put back on that $140 a month, okay? Slip. Just to make sure that it doesn't ever happen to somebody else again. The port should live with that $140 a month that they shove down my throat, okay? And I should still be charged that. That's about all. Oh, one other thing. You guys want to do some money-making things, I'm still gonna go with it, okay? Put a little boat yard, or hook up the parking lot out there so you start making some money off of it. But I'll give one more, and I'd be happy to research it, or help research it, or whatever, and take that 40 acres of worthless property that was shoved onto you by the city of Florence out there, okay? And turn it into a veterans memorial cemetery, okay? That's 40 acres. It can remain a veteran cemetery state if you keep it under 400 graves. 400 graves is $4,000 a piece, is $1.6 million. You'll never see any better money off that and a better use for that piece of property. I'm sure it would be supported by a lot of people.
A lot of veterans in town.
That's all I have to say.
Before you step down, you lost me on the 140 a month. Can you
Well,
explain this? Did
I was
any of the
taking-
commissioners understand?
No, I didn't understand.
I was paying a yearly charge.
Yes,
I went in and gave them my $840, they wouldn't take it.
okay,
You remember that, okay? So then, in that scathing letter that Mr., what's his name? I don't even
okay,
remember.
let's just, yeah.
He wrote that letter right after he read that letter at the meeting, okay? And went ahead and gave me the yearly charge and charged me by the month. So he could throw me out of here anytime he wanted to.
So he's charging you $140 per month.
He prorated the annual rate.
Prorated the annual, and that was never, there's no place. Kelly comes up and said, oh, that was due to change in September. That's not true. There's no documentation, there's nothing anywhere that says that.
So
And
what
I
you
think
want to do now?
I didn't break the contract, the port did,
Right.
So I
and I
don't know what
want
you're
it
paying
back
now.
to the $140 a month.
So what you're saying is you want the annual rate paid out on $140
Yeah.
per month as dictated by
Yeah, the
the,
port
by
shoved that down
Luskin.
my throat, I didn't ask for that,
Okay,
okay?
That
So I
made it
think
clear
we
to
should-
me.
I think
Thank
the
you.
port should live with that,
that made it clear, thank you.
thank you.
One clarification on the post office issue. Are you talking about having accessible individual boxes in the port office similar to?
Well, you could put it anywhere, you know?
Well, I need to understand, but you're talking about a piece of hardware, a collection box.
Something, yeah, I
But
mean,
not,
it could
not,
be.
not one that would be common, because if people are getting,
Well, I remember when my grandfather drove the mail route in eastern Colorado, okay? He had a case of Coke,
Okay.
24 things, Coke bottles, and he kept each person's mail in that.
have you talked to our
That's enough infrastructure.
local postmaster?
No, it has nothing to do with postmaster, really.
Yeah,
Right.
I think,
Yeah, it
I think
does.
you should research that before that.
Yeah.
I think you
Yeah,
need to
they're
do that.
very
because
particular about
federal
what they
mail is-
deliver to.
There's some specific regulations in reference to the delivery of and where to deliver federal mail.
And I don't think we'd want to be responsible for anybody else's mail. You know, I mean, it's really, if you'd like to research it and then come back to us, we'll listen to it.
Okay.
But I think there's some valid points raised by these two
Well, I mean,
commissioners.
that's commonplace in an apartment, doesn't it? There's a mailbox out in front, everybody's mailbox.
Well, David, I know they're at the condo, and then we
Yeah.
can get off of this, that we have to have a very specific type of
Oh,
box.
yeah, I remember you talking about that.
Yeah,
one day.
in fact, we had to replace it, and then I had to coordinate with the postmistress, even on the replacement. And they would not deliver certain items until we added up to government spec. And so anyway, I think it would be good to research it.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about people, you know,
Oh.
like the bank statements. and,
Oh, it's
you know,
point well taken.
Medical paper.
Okay, you can get a general delivery address, Florence, Oregon. Anybody. It's not, to me, I don't see a lot of difference between
You have
a,
to live within so many blocks of the post office.
that's not our, we don't want the responsibility as a port, I would think. And I can't speak for all the commissioners, but that's a lot of responsibility to put on our staff. Not that it's even legal, okay? I don't see this as any other different than an apartment complex saying, hey, we don't want to go to the post office, we want it delivered here to your office. So I don't see any difference, so, if you happen to
I'll go
check
to the
into
post
it.
office and see if there's any
Yeah.
special regulations, but
Okay, thank you.
I would think it'd be something pretty easy to coordinate between, you know, staff and. Thanks, folks.
Thank you. Was that it, Dina?
Yes.
Next on the approval of the minutes by consent. I wasn't in attendance at the work session of the regular meeting. Are there any issues in minutes? Nancy?
No. If there's-
I move.
Well,
No.
I think it's just by consent. I think we all
No objection.
approval of financials by consent, and we'll have a presentation by Manager McClure.
Okay. Bills paid in September were in the amount of $92,028.77. Couple things I wanna point out on the profit and loss reports. On the general fund, if you go to page 3,
3 of 5?
3 of 5. Commissioner Buckwald had asked me a couple of months ago if we were gonna get a workers' comp insurance credit, and that did come in September in the amount of $787.60, so I just wanted to point that out. And I have nothing else on this until we get to capital outlay, which is on page 4 of 5. Under capital outlay, we have the recent projects that you approved me to proceed with. We have the vehicle replacement of $8,995, the security cameras coming in just under $10,000, and the broadband Wi-Fi upgrade of $5,000. We also have the parking lot resurface and restripe project, which was approved the prior fiscal year. but it got postponed, so that got done in September in the amount of just under $5,000. So those 4 projects were not in this year's budget. So my plan for this is to come back next month with a supplementary budget. And my thinking here is to appropriate the property sale revenue, which came in, and also the state forest sale revenue, which came in. And those 2 things total a little over $41,000. These 4 projects come in at about $29,000. But I'm in the process of talking to the auditors and talking to the Department of Revenue to get guidance on that supplementary budget. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, and I should be able to have more information for you at the November meeting.
Okay, as of today, you've not spoke to the Department of Revenue in reference to the supplementary budget?
I spoke to Lane Council of Governments, and I spoke to the auditor that we are, not Ms. Grimstad, but her staff that we've been working with.
You talked to them about preparing a supplemental?
Yes.
Did you tell them that we've spent the money already?
No,
Be sure you do that.
okay.
I'd like to go back to the fuel purchases, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I must have missed something, because I'm confused why we don't have any marine fuel. We budgeted 45,000, we've not purchased any, versus we didn't budget for non-ethanol.
Oh, it's combined into the marine fuel other, we just need to break it down, so we can fix that.
So 5371 non-ethanol gas belongs down at 5370, is that what you mean? In
Well,
marine fuel?
5371 and 5372 are just the itemized, the gas, but everything is lumped under the 5370, which is right above
Marine
those 2.
fuel.
Right, so we just need to, that's just a typo, we need to just break those out.
Okay.
Because you can see it at the total 5370, the year-to-date number of
Right.
29,000 compared to the 45, so we'll fix that. And then also under the, where is it? At the bottom of page 4 of 5, there is $3,700 spent for the boardwalk fire system. That is going to actually move over to the capital maintenance fund, because we budgeted 20 grand in the capital maintenance fund, which we already spent in August on this fire system. This was just a little bit more to finish the entire fire system underneath Moe's Restaurant. And the company and the maintenance staff thought if we could just finish that, do $3,700 more, that finishes, again, the complete project under Moe's. So we will go over budget a little bit in that boardwalk fire system, but we will take that money out of the Moe's building and only spend, we won't exceed $46,000 instead of $50,000 for the Moe's building repairs. So we'll watch that. And other than that, occupancy for September was good, 91%.
Still have some snowbirds with us.
Not too many. I think most everybody's pulled out.
First rain, they gotta get out of here, huh?
Yeah. So that's all I have on the financials.
We're looking at the general fund. Is the capital maintenance fund in here?
It's right next, it's the second page. It's in between the general fund and the occupancy report.
Oh, mine. It's just not in mine. Do you have one? fine, I just don't have it.
Okay.
You want it? You have any questions? Anything else?
And then,
As far as that. Bill, Nancy, do you have any questions?
Nope.
Okay, I guess we have approval of financials by consent. Boy, the next whole business, erosion repair project update. Unfortunately, it has McClure beside it, so start explaining. It's all
All right.
yours.
I just have just an informal report tonight. Just wanted to go over a couple of things. Wanted to confirm that the FEMA funding is now unrestricted. If you recall at the, again, Terry, you weren't here, but at the last work session with Engineer Aiken, the funding had been restricted due to the hurricanes. And I have confirmed with Julie at the Oregon Emergency Management Office that they are unrestricted now.
Was it actually restricted? I know you and I had that conversation question.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
good.
So in looking at where we stand, approval for reimbursement for expenses to date is still pending due to Oregon Emergency Management Office still needs updated quantities, cost estimates, and a sketch. We've gone into a third phase, or a third repair plan with it moving off of when we identified that there was private property. And so therefore, since it has moved a little bit, Oregon Emergency Management Office needs some updates on that. And we had a conference call with the Department of State Lands. They still have in their application, the joint permit application with the Corps of Engineers and DSL, they still have the original plan, which was the GO2s, and that first plan that Mr. Aiken came to the board with. So they need a revised plan, and they sent a checklist of quite a few things to Manager Luskin at the time and to Mr. Aiken, and those revisions have not been submitted yet. So that joint permit application is still unfinished.
So they've not been submitted because they've not been done?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
So,
And there's fees that still need to be paid to DSL to pay for that joint permit application.
just seems like a lot of time lapse there with nothing being done on it to meet those requirements. I mean, the engineer knew that.
Well, there was a downtime, remember, through the process when there was, where his work was suspended for a few months.
Right, but it hasn't been for over a month now.
Right.
Maybe, maybe even longer, I'm not sure. Okay, that's fine, but my expectation is that they get on the ball and get this done. I mean, he's here last month selling himself up one side and down the other, and we need to see something done.
Yeah, and all that design should have been, naturally, it's on CAD, and to revise that movement, just shift it, shouldn't be. that
Dina,
big,
maybe
so-
you can address this, not to interrupt you, but
Yeah,
that's part of the problem, is that his drawings that were submitted to the city showed the toe being at 8.2, and I'm assuming it's 8 point something. Well, anytime we go below 10.2, we have to have permit from the Corps and from DSL. Well,
because we're in water or something.
We're
Yes,
below the
because-
high water mark.
Yeah.
So they're basing everything on those first drawings?
no, our engineer did not submit anything to DSL or the Corps, correct? Because he kept saying, oh, we don't need to because we're above. Well, his drawings did not reflect that we were above. In fact, his drawings reflected we were below. So DSL is going, no, you guys are below the 10.2, you still need our permit. To me, he sat right there and said, we're gonna move everything up. He just messed up on his drawings to the city. The city said, wait a minute, you guys are in the in-water, so they contacted DSL. I'm assuming that's the route it took.
I'm not sure.
He was informed by the city planning. The guy we talked to on the phone conference, how he become aware of it.
Okay.
And that either way, the Corps of Engineers said, wait a minute, you guys do need our permit. And our engineer's going, no, you don't, because we're out, and yes, we are,
But he
we're
never
in.
submitted it with that revision.
He never made the revision.
Yeah, okay.
So as far as they're concerned, based on the drawings, we are under their jurisdiction, we need their permit.
Correct. And that's what
So
we determined.
he's in a process for the past couple of months, I'm assuming, correcting that.
No, because his last email to us said, authorize me to spend more money. Is
Right.
basically what it said to fix it. I'm at the point, you know what, we've paid you, he
Well-
can't justify what we've paid
Well,
him yet.
an error on his part doesn't constitute a crisis on our part.
No, it doesn't, that should be corrected on his dollar.
Yeah, yeah. If he-
That's
They
not
really
what he-
should.
His
Oh, yeah.
last email specifically said, basically authorize me to spend more of your
No,
money.
No, I
And I'm
think,
paraphrasing it, but
yeah,
that's what it
if he made
said.
the error, it should be on his dime to correct it. I know that that's what I have to do if I blow any code creation for a municipality. It's, they don't pay to correct my error, and if it was truly an error on his part in terms of that level location, so somebody needs to have a conversation with him.
Well, I want your direction tonight on how to proceed.
That's what we're,
That's what
Kind of
you're,
the gist
you
of this
guys can discuss it
conversation.
as much as, yeah.
That's-
Yeah, well, I think, that needs to be discussed with him, our feelings about that. It appears to us, it appears to me, listening to what you're saying, what you've been reading, is that he should have fixed that in the beginning. That should have been fixed, because he told us, I don't know that he told us it was fixed, but he alluded that we didn't need those permits because it was above that mark. But the documentation he submitted to the city and whoever else
Was
did not
an error.
indicate that. Therefore, now we're stuck
Yeah,
with that.
yeah.
Because they think we need the permit based on those drawings. Well, it's not our gig, we didn't do the drawings, we paid him already to do those drawings. We should not have to pay him again.
Now, there may be an explanation somewhere in here, so, but it
Could be.
would be nice to hear it, what it is.
well, I think we need to look into errors and omissions the whole way. I mean, even DSL asked us on the phone, well, why are you doing it if you aren't gonna, 'cause I said, well, our intent is to do it above water. Well, why are you building it above water if the problem is from erosion from the river? They even got a chuckle out of that, literally a chuckle. And I've said this all along, if we aren't gonna put it down in the water where we're getting protection from his so-called erosion, why are we doing the project? It's a beautiful
Well-
landscape is what it is.
Well, the erosion's from above, clearly, I mean, for the most part. And-
Yes.
And that was clarified. I mean, we asked him pointedly, will the FEMA grant be valid and we are not misrepresenting? Because the challenge was we do not want to misrepresent the kind of remediation we're doing and the cause for the remediation. And if you look at the topography, the water from that half acre up there is all flowing out that one spot. And you get 70 inches a year for 20 years flowing out one spot. Anyway.
Well, I think he agreed that it was, I mean, at the last meeting, he agreed that it came from both directions.
Yeah.
But he also said, I have not changed my position from the
I know.
start. So he agreed it was 50-50 at the last, or to me and Ron.
Yeah.
If it's 50-50, what are we doing the project up here? We've already paid enough money, we should have an engineered project 6 foot below the water line. Well, we've paid that kind of money for engineering.
Yeah.
You know, this is a very simple, we could have done it without any permit process at all on our own.
Yeah.
I just
A
don't.
farmer would have had it fixed, yeah.
We don't need a permit as long as we stay at the 10-2. We could have hired a surveyor to mark that 10-2 and put all the rock in we wanted, and we wouldn't have had to hire an engineer. You know, and to me, he took a simple project, made it very difficult, charged a lot of money, and then backed off to a simple project, and then did not finish the project. for the amount of money we paid, we still do not have a permit in hand to do anything.
Dina, is it clear enough what conversation we need to have with him, or do we need to expand a little
Well,
more?
from what I'm hearing from you is that I go back to him and say that you need to submit all the correct documentation to these regulatory agencies on your dime.
own dime, exactly.
Another question I have is you might look and see if he has paid any permits, so we aren't paying permits again.
I believe there was $277 approximately paid to DSL, but there was a few more fees on top of that that had not been paid yet to
But Are
DSL.
we paying those directly or going through the engineer?
We were paying the engineer,
Okay.
we were reimbursing the engineer.
Okay.
So
he ought to know
it flowed
exactly
through
what
his
we paid.
account.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't in on the original discussions, but does anybody remember this, where this tow was located? I mean, the discussion was it was not gonna be an in-water project, right? That was
correct.
what the early discussion was. And yet, again, clarification, what he ended up proposing or drawing or committing to a plan actually showed an in-water elevation.
That's right. The drawing, the cutaways that you've seen that,
Yeah,
that's what he developed when he said, we're gonna do this out of water, no permits,
okay.
and that's the plan. Well, he submitted that plan to the planning commission, city of Florence.
But with elevations in there.
With elevations in there, it showed it being 2 foot below where we should have been, in the water. The planning commission said, wait a minute, I think you need DSL permits. They notified the guy we talked to, and then he contacted Dean and said, yeah, you guys do need our permits. Or we need different drawings.
These are the drawings we're talking about right here.
Correct.
Where
Yeah.
it shows the 10-foot mark and it shows it below.
Yes, you see it down here, what's
Yeah.
that, 8 point something?
Yep.
So either he didn't understand the 10.2 is and it's 10.2 feet above the mean low water mark.
Okay.
He put it to 8.2 feet above the mean low
But the
water.
magic number is 10.2.
10.2, maybe 10.5. They weren't too sure about that.
It was over 10 feet.
Well,
It was over 10 foot, correct. I asked him if we could get just a verbal variance to go to the 8 feet, and we can.
Dina, I would ask
For
him
groundwater.
For
specifically
it?
if the level that he submitted on his plan was an error on his part.
But they're believing the same guy that did all the.
Well, it has to be.
Well, yeah, but I'd like to hear what he says, because,
That's real key on,
yeah. Because if he comes back and says, yeah, I blew that part of it, then the revisions are on him,
That's the quickest way to put him on the spot,
yeah.
is to ask him that question. Is that number correct?
it's all the 5-minute fix on a CAD program, I would think.
I would think. Shifting is gonna be a little more, but that part of it, yeah.
Are we good doing it at the 10.2 level?
I haven't given it enough consideration because I didn't, I'll certainly give it some thought, but I can't answer that right now. I was going based on his expertise at that point, so I wasn't in a critical mode, but we can all get into a critical mode and see it.
I'd like a second opinion on the whole project, but I don't know what that does.
No. Yeah, I don't know what it does either. I suspect
Do you want me to get a
Keep
quote?
somebody out of jail.
You
well,
want me to, I have a list of engineers, I could at least inquire to
I don't-
someone to get, to just.
well,
see
what's our
what-
timeline in terms of when we could possibly begin? What
We have-
does the calendar look like?
We have plenty of time. This project does not need to be completed until February of 2019. So we have 2 in-water work periods ahead of us.
And that timeline is our money, correct? So permits can be extended. I mean, we don't even have a permit now, so it doesn't matter on the permit process.
Well, Mr. Chairman, what I would like to see, because if we have a time on the calendar, is to is for Dina to have the conversation with our engineer, and we get a report back at our November meeting, and then we're gonna clearly know, I think, what we're dealing with at that point. And then, I'm ready to agree, let's look at some alternatives.
Alternatives in terms of getting a second opinion?
Yep. All options are open at that point, I would think.
I gotta tell you, it's been rough since the first time we met this organization. It's been a rough road all the way through.
With this engineer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been up and down the whole thing, the whole
I'm
time.
kinda getting that feeling.
Nancy, do you have anything you'd like to say?
No, I think, asking for clarity doesn't work, then we just move on.
Okay. So you concur with
I agree.
Dave?
Yep.
Is it clear as mud now?
I like my
I can
direction.
I can see Dina's expression while we're going through all this.
So
Yeah.
what are they really trying to say to me?
Yes.
Okay?
Well, I think you need to ask for clarity of,
Absolutely.
of where he intends that toe to be.
Mhm.
Do we have the Saxon property? Any issue there we can talk about?
That is yet, the meeting has not been scheduled yet, but that should be soon.
And that is between Brewer and Saxon.
Correct.
Our attorney in Saxon.
We're hoping that will take place next week. That was last I heard.
And during that discussion, we're going to, I take it back because we're liable to be getting into something that belongs in executive session, so I'm holding back. No further questions.
All right? Well,
I've got just one other thought I gotta throw out there before I lose it. We've got a very expensive, dredging project coming up, very expensive. At the time, I think I did the math, and it's like, we might as well start charging each mooring spot out there another $20 a month or something to help pay for it.
Was it 400,000
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was, that's what's,
It's a redredge of the area under the moorage, similar to what we did,
you know.
8 or 10 years ago.
that we're still paying for. Is
Yes.
that right?
Excuse me?
We're still paying for that last dredging, is that
Yes, I
correct?
believe there's about 60,000, 60 grand left on that loan.
so we have to pay to have all this sand removed, but then we have to pay to have a riprap wall because the tides are taking the sand away. Something ain't adding up there. But that being said, I had to get that little caveat in there, because if you see it's kind of, we're just going in a circle here. We gotta pay to have this sand taken out, and we're gonna pay to have this rock put up there because but it's not taking the sand out. The sand's still there, that's our problem. But is there any way we could think about moving that riprap out and maybe using some of the dredge sand as backing?
That would be an engineer's,
Yeah, suddenly you're into a redesign. I think after next month, we can decide whether we're,
But we might be able to utilize the dredge sand into, I don't know, maybe we're jumping into the,
your dirt moving experience is coming to fore, Terry.
well, I mean,
Yeah,
you
no,
might as well, we're gonna have to dredge that.
No,
Wasn't there some talk at one of the, was it last month, we had just a brief with the engineer, some talk about some ideas he had about cleaning that basin out naturally? Was that last month?
Well, we talked about removing a number of pilings to
Yeah,
help
there was some
that
talk in that,
process.
he said there's been some study, or some experiments, or he's been a part of some experiments down south someplace, and where they've been trying to do some, I don't know if it was pilings or boom logs or what it was, to try to get it to help clean out the
natural
channel.
flush?
Yes, a natural flush.
We had that conversation at the meeting before last.
Was it?
And I think the staff has moved a few boom logs. I was curious, I haven't been able to see if it's done anything at all, but if
I mean,
it's
lots of
going
other
to-
ports have to have the same kind of problem we have, don't they?
mhm,
Or we can't be completely unique
no.
in terms of having to spend $400,000 every
8 years.
5 or 6 or 7, 8 years.
Well, look at Ilwaco. They have to moor their channel all the way, they have to dredge it all the way up in, it's like a mile long, because it silts in.
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of, it's gonna be dependent on your current. I mean, no two river systems are the same and no two current flows are the same, but you know, at least we don't have the poor problem that Astoria is facing with PCBs that they don't know where it's coming from, and they're looking at remediation that could be in the millions and millions of dollars.
We beat this up pretty well. Anything you'd like to add, Dave, Nancy? I think we'll get a clarification from the
Okay.
engineer.
Yep.
New business, review list of projects, which we were all,
I
Providing
got a
copies.
lot of projects.
Yeah, I see that wish list there.
Okay, so I gave you 3 reports. One, one is fiscal year, this fiscal year, next fiscal year, and the third one is just major projects. So this is obviously in itself a work in progress and a kind of a living document because things will change as things come up. But just wanted to review that these projects have been worked on. We started working on these lists probably in the spring. I met with Tracy and Jason. And we just started from one end of the property to the other, and Mapleton property. And what needs to be fixed. And we just started making notes off of everything. We categorized office equipment, you know, mows, fuel system, gangways, transient dock, and just kind of went from start to finish and wrote down all the things that they said that needed to be done. Then we started prioritizing them. So this year, we have done some of these projects, some of them, not all maintenance, some of them have been like, you know, replacing the maintenance truck and upgrading the security cameras and Wi-Fi but there are some projects that we're still working on, and we've got kind of a jump on the facilities projects this year, but are really looking heavily then on the marina projects for the rest of the fiscal year. Some of them are fuel system. The top one that you see, well, actually on both this first report, the first line under facilities and the first line under marinas, those we did budget for. You'll see that under the budget column, that is in this year's general fund budget. But the rest of the projects we're trying to fit into the general facilities budget. And we'll just be taking them as we go with what we can get to. Now that we have a third maintenance person on and working, we can do some of these projects that require 3 guys to work on. We can schedule those. So this is basically just for your review.
I had a question about the catch basin 3 replacement, top of some fiscal year 17-18 fuel system. Can you refresh me what that is?
Well, I was afraid you were gonna ask that, because it would be really helpful for Jason or Tracy to be here to explain
That's-
that. I can get
won't
back
put
to
you
you
on
on
the
that, but some of these, there were some electrical issues, there were some fuel line issues, there were a lot of issues in relationship to the fueling system from the tanks out to the end of the dock that needed to be upgraded. Some of them have been done, some of them still need to be done, but exactly the detail and some of the terminology I'm not real on top of just yet.
Now, is everything on here, is this stuff that you've got quotes for that maintenance or staff can't handle? Is that what all this stuff is, like the painting and
Not
caulking?
necessarily, no. These are just things that if we have to buy the materials, they've already gone out, they've already priced some of these projects. So we would not need a third party to contract to come in and do these. We are just, some of them, like when we get into some of the electrical,
Yeah.
yes, we do. Because we are not going to be dealing with electrical issues, minor ones, but nothing that requires an electrician. So those would be contracted services.
Did the extra low tide cause any damage to the fuel line? 'Cause, you know, there were
Not to the-
kinks and,
Not to the fuel line. What the concern with the low tides are the F-dock brackets. As the dock was tilting,
twisted
some of
them.
them are a little bent, but, and I'm a little concerned about this coming spring, when we will have minus tides again. So we're just we'll have to watch it and hope for the best. So the second one is just also a list of, for next year. And just for the public information, these reports are online on the port website, in the packet. So if you want to look at them, they are there for the public to take a look at. But this is the type of thing that I want to be coming to you on a regular basis, so we can keep track of these things and we can prioritize, and I can have a better idea of, you know, this is a major project, we completed it last month. Or we're looking at doing this project next month. But staying within the parameters of the fiscal year budget and working close with staff to schedule them and get them done. The third page is the big projects. And this is where I really need the board's help, because these are in the tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you know what our financial situation is, so we need to work together to try to figure out ways to move forward and prioritize. So I did star the ones that are on the 5-year strategic business plan. Just a quick review for the public. These are rebuilding the bulkhead, purchasing debris booms, installing public crabbing docks, building a second restroom in the campground, upgrading the sea row, electrical upgrades in the campground. That one I particularly want to, we may need to do that sooner rather than later, because we have been experiencing some electrical issues with a full campground. Some of the wiring is old, and we've had to pay electricians to come in and check them out. Plus, they alternate. I don't know how familiar you are with the campground, but on that outer circle, they're 20 amp, 30 amp, 20 amp, 30 amp, all around that outer, not completely all the way around, but 80% of the way around. Well, all these big rigs that you see coming in,
50 amp.
they are 50 amp. So we are becoming outdated for electrical, so that needs to be considered.
Substantial cost increase it to 50 amp.
Conduit size, I don't know whether it's buried cable or in conduit, but chances are the current conduit size wouldn't be sufficient.
So that one's on my radar. We also have the future Siuslaw Estuary Trail project. I don't have a meeting scheduled yet, but in my communication with the city, I might be having a meeting with them in November to discuss where we are. What I have discovered right now is that there's 2 phases, and the phase 1 is the through Old Town and Port property. Phase 2 is coming off of Highway 126, the northern part. That was funded by the STIP, which is the State Transportation Improvement Projects grant funding. But the remaining has not been funded yet. It has gone into funding requests, but it went into like a Connect Oregon 6 grant application, but it was not awarded. I'm still waiting to hear from Lane Council of Governments, because she indicated that there was some funding there. And with that grant application, the port said that at the time, and this was several years ago, that we would have a $40,000 match. Well, we don't have $40,000 sitting off to the side for this, so,
We haven't budgeted that anywhere.
you know.
Can we just erase that?
Do you wanna come to the meeting with me in November?
We don't have
I'd
to
be
deal
happy.
with it yet.
I know, I'm just kinda telling you where we're
Yeah,
at.
no, let's not
Dina,
jump
when
the
you're,
crosswalk.
when you're having that meeting, and it may be premature, but probably not, and you and I have discussed this in terms of the path that they're gonna take through our campground. You know, as you mentioned, we need to consider the safety and the privacy of our campers. Can't have people wandering right by the front of their camper in the middle of the night, because that's part of the trail. So I am very interested in where they propose to enter the Siuslaw Trail and what path they intend to take through our campground, because wrestling with it, I can't see a solution other than they would come in behind the current business office and behind our current campground. So on the north side of our property, rather than having the trail walk right along our most valuable property, which is our riverfront property. So you might see what they had in mind.
Well, there were options.
Okay.
There were option 1, option 2, option 3. Option 1 is to go, the preferred option is to go along the river bank,
Our
in
most
between the
valuable
RVs
property.
and the river, all the way around the dredge spoil pit,
Yeah.
around to the north side, and then you're into estuary.
Yeah.
That would be a natural trail on the north side of the pit, and then when you get behind those water and electric sites, there was a, what do you call it, cantilever, what's the word?
Cantilever.
Thank you,
Yeah,
trail, a raised trail,
yeah.
along that section, and then it would go north around the estuary behind those homes and end up at the Highway 126.
And we know that walking out on the point along the river, that, you know, it's a beautiful view of the river, but you're not really into the estuary yet. You're not into the estuary until you complete the loop around. So I think we're gonna have a wrestling match in coming up with a trail entry point that doesn't, I mean, we cannot afford to damage and to decrease the value of our riverfront camping spots. Those are the moneymakers, as you well know. And location, location, location. People, if they're gonna pay for a riverfront site, 5 feet off their bay window, they can't have a trail where people are walking all times of the day and night. So,
I tend to agree with you, but on the east side, I think Saxon's, that's why he's fighting for his property line. That's where the trail will go through our east side on Saxon's property.
yeah,
So it's only gonna front us on our southerly,
yeah, but I'm worried about how we get to that spot. And so, anyway, the concern needs to be raised, and it probably the sooner the better,
Mhm.
because it's gonna be a wrestling match with this board in terms of where we place that.
well, what do you do with the riprap? Cantilever out over it?
Yeah.
Well, that was brought up at the last work session, and I believe Mr. Aiken did say something about a hard pack, just in between, right above the riprap, there would be a hard pack, area that would be prepared, I guess.
But again, that would put the trail between our
I know.
campsites and the river. So then it gets to the security question, the privacy question, the devaluing some very valuable port property, so.
I would like to request that one commissioner attend these Siuslaw Estuary Trail meetings. that I have with the city and be kind of a board representative. That would be helpful, if you would agree, or if someone would like to volunteer.
I'd be happy to, but that doesn't mean any of the other commissioners here probably wouldn't be happy to either, so the offer's open to anybody.
Well, and there
wants
could
it.
be two, as long as there isn't three, where we have a quorum.
I think one's enough, and Terry's tough enough that I think he'll represent us.
Well, the thing that really concerns me is, it was a stretch for me to say, okay, we're gonna put this glorified landscape of riprap up there, and we're moving that back 25 to 30 foot onto our existing property. Now we're gonna have a trail potentially on top of that. So you're losing a whole row of camping back there.
That's what I'm concerned with, precisely. So make sure you carry that message. That
So
you
do
got
we-
the
are-
message.
It's not time for us to decide, but I would say your general opinion is you don't want the trail there.
No, I think we need to come in, I think they need to enter the estuary near where the estuary begins, namely on the north side of our property. In other words, behind the current port offices. Right now, you got the employee parking behind the port offices, and you have a trail that comes in behind, not even, and then enters the estuary from that.
Well, I think they're entering the estuary from further north.
Well, that's the other end, but the port end,
They're wanting to come all the way around.
and I don't blame them, what they wanna do is take them, and it's a beautiful thought, is to walk right along the river and go around the point and pick up.
Tie into the boardwalk is what they wanna
Yeah,
do.
yeah. So I think it's gonna be a wrestling match, we need to figure out.
When we were talking to the, can't remember, Brenda from LCOG, she had said something about possible tying all of this into, because you can't build it without having the bulkhead repaired, and that there might be a way of putting all of those things and getting our repairs done to get some of these other things done too. And that's with the current plan, with the path running along the whole side of the river, behind the, I don't know if you would move the campers, their spaces a little bit, I don't know, but if we were able to get the bulkhead repaired, all of these things in one chunk of money, where we weren't be coming up with three kinds of funds,
Who's
where we had a
expense?
lot, well, whether it's FEMA, whether it's the state, because the state is wanting the path. It's coming through, transportation, through ODOT. A lot of the funding is coming, and she was talking, am I wrong, Dina?
Yeah, she was,
It was connecting these.
and there were some conversations, when this started, Mark Freeman was the manager. And when I looked back in some of the files, I could see that there was conversations in these preliminary meetings in this planning stage where he said, well, we will consider it, but the bulkhead needs to be a part of this trail project, because this is where the trail's going and we have a failing bulkhead, so we need to combine the projects together. But when I saw the application for funding, it was only for like $700,000, and we had the $40,000 match. Well, we know that the bulkhead itself is gonna cost a lot more than that. So I don't really know, and again, this was 7 years ago. But everything's been kind of quiet since then. And it just got on my radar because we're talking about the erosion repair and all this other stuff. So, I mean, we don't need to make any decisions, obviously,
Well-
tonight. I just kind of wanted to get some discussion, just get your,
I think this is good discussion.
Yeah.
And I think it leads back to, why are we doing this riprap? I gotta go back to that question, I'm sorry. You think about it, where are we gonna put that trail? It belongs on the river. And if there's a possibility that they're gonna help us with the boardwalk, why aren't we waiting to
Yeah,
see
that-
where this is going? Before we jump in and spend, we're not gonna spend just $50,000.
We've already spent 50,000 basically.
Well-
We've spent 38,000 on the erosion.
We have to pay
repair.
25% matching. And at the rate we're going here, this is gonna be a $500,000 project before you know it, with the riprap. I mean, that's a little extravagant, but I bet you it's gonna reach 200, if not more. We're already into it 50,000 just for permits and fees and engineering, and the engineering's not over yet. I think we got the cart ahead of the horse, that we should have figured out where that trail was going and incorporated that into the engineering of the riprap.
Well, yeah. But I'll tell you what, doing the geometry in my head, if you're gonna put the trail where I hear you talking about, you've got the security measures, the reduction in value of those camping spots. I mean, right now, in the evening, do we allow anybody that wants to just wander through the campground
Oh,
without?
we keep an eye on it.
There's nothing to prevent me from walking down in front of those along the river. There's
Right.
absolutely nothing.
Okay,
It's unrestricted use through
Okay.
there. That's the way it is today. Yeah.
okay. So in that regard, my concern is unfounded because it's not gonna really change the
No, it won't be
status.
anything different, it won't be anything new, other than
you giving them
Instead of
a nice
finished-
trail.
a finished
possibly a
trail.
nice trail and more use of it, that may be the case.
Okay, all right,
But we don't have any restrictions today.
okay, all right.
I think just because they rent that site, they don't own that. They don't own everything out front of them, that's owned
Oh,
by
I
everybody.
understand that, but you wanna make sure, I mean, we're presenting value to our customers.
Right,
And we wanna make sure we don't diminish the value.
but we're giving them a trail to traverse on.
Well.
And
yeah.
someday we'd like to pave the whole thing. Get rid of some
Cut down all
gravel,
the trees.
dirt.
No, I think what you're saying is loud and clear in reference of diminishing value, but there's quite a bit of ground there. Because they're not renting the grass and all the way to the bulkhead area.
I understand your concern,
I do too.
but I don't think it's enough to say no. To me, the trail belongs there. That's just my opinion.
But we don't have to make that decision
No,
for
we
quite a
don't.
while.
It gives us some food, though. We need to be thinking about it.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I don't know who come up with the $1.5 million estimate to rebuild the bulkhead. I think that's a number they pulled out of a hat.
No, that actually, we got some Oregon State Marine Board grant money to do some engineering a couple years, 3 or 4 years ago. So an engineering firm came in and actually engineered, gave some proposals of what that would cost to repair. And that
Did
was-
they give us drawings with that?
Yes.
And we
I
have them at
full
the
file.
office?
Yep,
Okay.
I would like to see those.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. A couple of the other projects I wanted to mention, we are going to be doing some repairs to, back up to the top of the list on the major projects. We've already completed the top one, the second phase of the 5-year project for replacing the fire system, under the wharf. The Mo's repairs, the building repairs, we budgeted 50,000 for that. We had an inspection done last year, and that building got some issues, some serious issues, and needs some work. So we are getting very close to putting out an RFP to start those repairs and probably do it in maybe 2 or 3 phases this winter. We want to tackle the west side of Mo's building because that's where the rains come in. And a few years ago, there was some work done on it, but it wasn't completed, and therefore water is getting into the walls, and there's some leaking in the windows. And the owner of Mo's has said, well, can we get that fixed before we get into the heavy rains? So I'm meeting with Jason tomorrow, and we're going to try to get some requests for quotes out to local contractors to at least get that west side done as soon as possible, now that the busy season is winding down. and then address some of the other building issues as we get more into the winter. The ICM repairs, Jason and I have a meeting with the manager at ICM and the contractor that they've hired to do those building repairs. We are meeting with them on Monday morning at 9 o'clock. Further down the list, we have a Mo's walkway, that walkway that goes right, that's kind of above ground, that goes into their front door. That has quite a bit of deterioration, and we are getting a quote from Topper out of Seattle, which did the metal grading gangway on the west side of Mo's to try to get a metal grading, but that's gonna be expensive, and I'm not saying we're gonna do it that, but we just wanted to get a quote to see what it would cost to put metal grading in, because that would be easier to maintain than painting, wood and painting and non-skid surface every year, putting money into that. But that is, from what I've been told, there's a lot of deterioration under there, and that needs to be addressed, high priority.
Is it possible that some of our local contractors could do that, though?
Yeah, possible. Yeah, I mean, we're just getting a quote from Topper because they did the other section.
On the other side
Right.
of ICM?
Yeah, and we just wanted to see what it would cost, because that's a beautiful metal grading walkway.
It is.
What it would cost to have that same type of walkway put in.
Did they also do the one on our public?
I don't know. But, so anyway, we're waiting to hear back from them. Just a quote, there's different directions we can go on that, but that is kind of a high priority. Dredging, obviously, we've already talked about that. Maintenance, the shop is still something to consider, but I do want to move a little bit further down the list, because Commissioner Duman, you wanted to know what the cost was when we were talking about bringing down those blue buildings. Jason got just an estimate from one of the roofing companies in town. They came out $128,500 for replacing the roofs. And to pour cement pads on both was from a cement contractor, $117,000. So you said you were waiting to hear those numbers?
Okay, well, thank you.
You bet.
And honestly, that's not out of line, I would expect that.
Approximately, what's the size of each of those buildings? 40 feet by, or 50 feet by,
48 feet.
48 feet
Wide.
wide.
and how long?
I don't know how long they are.
Couple hundred?
Yeah.
It's 48 wide, I'm
I
not
don't
sure
have that
how long
right
they
off
are.
the top of my head, but I can.
Are the walls of those buildings worth putting this much money into?
Sure. Yeah, your structural strength is still intact inside. I think that's not the key. The key is to take the numbers that were quoted to us here and figure out, is the rent enough to do it? And up to this point here, I don't know what our policy is, but when Stephen was here, he was recommended to not rent them out at all. Well, your rent doesn't look very good when you tell people they're not rentable. And that was the direction, correct? We stopped.
We stopped only for a couple of months, and then we resumed. We also, there were some organizations that had free storage. We gave them to the end of 2016, and we ended that, thinking that might, that we may be making a change in those buildings. So right now, they are probably over half full.
Yeah,
Yeah, we probably, 60–70%,
I'd say about 70.
70% full right now.
The,
And our revenue is approximately, well, I think I budgeted 20 grand. It's 22 grand a year that we get.
so you're getting a 10% return on your money per year if you were to spend $250,000?
Well, less than that, but.
But if,
Well, it's
That's not-
8%.
I mean, we
but
still
if you
want
put
the
cement
longevity.
floors in,
Put cement floors,
you can
we
get
raise
more
the rent,
money.
you
you
raise
can
them
get
all.
more, because
You clean that up, put, like you said, put roofs on it, put cement floors on it, trust me, there's gonna be worth more money. They're
Oh,
gonna
yeah,
be
it'll
full.
be worth more money, yep.
To me, that's what, it's not, I think structurally inside, the buildings appear to
Most
be
of it,
fine.
I mean, it's been a while since we walked through it, I mean, there's some things that have to be dealt with, but it didn't look, they're not falling down, they just look ugly.
If you were to build those buildings new right now from scratch, I mean,
You
you're
could
looking
even-
at $500,000. That's off the top of my head, so I don't wanna be quoted on that, but it's expensive, those buildings to build new. So if we can spend $250,000, maybe increase the rent value by a third,
And rent them all out. I mean, I think that, we're not doing this right away, but I
No.
think that's something that the pencil needs to be put to,
Mhm.
and just work more than one scenario as to
we haven't put
payback would be.
a penny into them for 40 years.
Not that I'm aware of, I mean, they've just been sitting there depreciated out.
So they are depreciated now.
And that's our fault, you know, that's the court's fault for not maintaining those buildings all along.
I know this is something we don't need to decide tonight, but it's something in the future that I'm a staunch supporter. I mean, there's not enough storage. So if we
Storage
can
is
make
a
the
big
numbers
business.
work,
It
pardon?
is a big,
Storage is a big business.
It
yes,
is.
it is.
Especially on the rainy old coast.
If you put a concrete floor in there and then give them the option, if they want, they can build their divider walls. That's fine.
But we can come back to that.
Yes.
I appreciate you showing us the estimated costs.
So, a couple other little things on there, again, campground, the inner circle sewer lines are, there's some concern there because the tree roots are a problem. We've, had a couple of issues, but, just something that we have on the radar. And
When you say relocate shop, did you have a idea?
well, the only idea that we have is if the estate sales vacates someday. Right now, my last conversation with Mrs. Sapp was that she would most likely renew her contract for at least one more year. But she was uncertain beyond that when we talked. So if that building were to become vacant, it would be, we would lose a revenue source, which again, that's your decision to weigh out. But we could have, we could put the maintenance shop in there. There would be, because right now the maintenance has no plumbing. They have, you know, they could use more of a shop to work in and have a little bit better facility than they have right now. I know, Terry, you,
I've
I
worked in a
know.
lot of shops.
I know you
and
have.
Of
I
course,
know you
love to
have.
have that shop.
Yeah, I was
I
gonna
know.
say.
So, anyway, just, you know, throwing out some ideas, and that would be the only thing I could think of off the top of my head. So,
I guess even there, my thoughts are, rather than lose a source of revenue, build them a shop. Build them a 20 by 30 shop. Something they can pull a vehicle in and work on it, and, you know, we own how many acres of
or
property.
if you were to move the maintenance shop and the warehouse over into that building, you would open up more storage space too.
Well, you need to do the math on that.
I know.
Let's don't talk about that tonight, because we're
Yeah.
just speculating.
Okay.
But if you want to propose something like that, sit down and, with that candle late at night, and put the pencil to those numbers. Because this is gonna be about math, is what
It
it's
is.
gonna be.
It is, and it's also going to be possibly a little bit more than once a month meetings with the board. We may have to have some work sessions, you know, to talk about some of these things that I have down at the bottom of the page. The first thing, I do want to let you know that I am working on that letter to the realtors.
Good.
So now that the season is starting to wind down, that is at the top of my list. And also, next month, I'll be coming to you with a probably a resolution for updating the public contracting policy. But all the policies, the ordinances, we've talked about this a lot. We need to start going through, and staff needs to start coming to the board with what are the last policies that were adopted by previous boards? Where do we stand? Are they acceptable? Do they need to be revised? If so, what's staff's recommendation? And you decide accordingly. We also will probably be due for a rate increase in campground and moorage. But unless we really have some improvements going into some planned improvements in the campground and some planned improvements in the marinas, I hate to just raise rates to be raising rates. And I know that there would be some public pushback on that unless we had some real reasons to.
It's kind of a catch-22, isn't it? We gotta make money to fix the place up.
Right.
We can't raise taxes, it doesn't happen anymore. I don't know if there's any options within the taxes to go to the people for anything for capital improvements, but you might look at that just out of curiosity. Maybe you might be looking at a bond issue, I don't know.
How about a GoFundMe page?
That might work.
I think that would probably
That's
be
a
more
good idea.
successful than a bond issue request, but that's all right.
GoFundMe for a new restroom facility.
And the strategic business plan, that 5-year plan comes to an end next June. So all of this that we've discussed kind of fit into that strategic business plan mentality of what are our projects, what are our priorities, and what are our sources for funding.
Well, since you said that, then I think that, I'm not tonight necessarily, but whenever we have one of these meetings in reference to that, I think it's time to bring the public in to start getting some ideas, because our ideas are right here, what we can come up with. But, you know, I believe there's a lot of people out in the community within this district that may have some good ideas that we could listen to. And it would be like we talked once or twice about a committee, so to speak. I don't know what you would call it, and I don't know how you would go about whatever.
Steering committee.
Whatever it's called, funding commit, whatever you want to call it. But we should, I think that it's time to do that, because we can't come up with, look at, our plate's pretty full. I think we should get input from the public, and we've talked about it a little bit, but I think it's time to make a step forward and to do it. Not tonight, but, you know, maybe that's something you can put on the agenda to talk about a process on how we can move forward to accomplish that.
I think the city has kind of done that in all of the projects they've been doing in Florence, involving a lot of people, a lot of planning, a lot of committees, a lot of meetings. Because it takes a lot more input than just simply.
Sure it does, and I agree, and I recognize that. But don't forget one thing. We have a huge district. We've got a huge district. And not just Mapleton, we go a long ways, up past where King Estate, we go close to I-5 in one spot there. We need to find a way to reach out to our entire district, because sometimes I feel like I'm just representing just the local campers. Sometimes that's what it feels like. Somehow or another, it would be nice to get just some information out somehow in a local newspaper, I don't know how.
That leads me back to a conversation I had with Dina. I think we need to sponsor sailboat classes next month, fishing classes the month after, and crabbing class, ways to involve the people in Florence and the surrounding areas. That there's more to do at the port than catch salmon. Come on down and rent a sailboat or bring your sailboat.
I was walking the dog once, and the Indian tribes were taking their kids out in the longboats. I thought that was way cool.
So it's,
I meant to say it before, but if I could just throw it out really quickly, I was really disappointed when I read that article about all the school kids in Florence going to Newport for a day at the port. When as far as I'm concerned, we got a much nicer port than Newport. That's my opinion.
well,
But I think they should have come. It's really too bad they didn't come here and
My
be able to
grandkids
work
had a
with.
chance to go on that, and it was a very fun day for them. Not to say we couldn't do that too, though.
Yeah,
Yeah, they got to go out on the boat and all that.
We could show them how to catch crab off the dock, we could show them how to, there's a lot of things we could do to educate. And that's my point, I had a conversation with Dean about, somehow we need to get the city of Florence excited about the opportunities they have at our local port.
And I think that's where getting volunteers with a committee
Yes?
is where it's gonna come, because I know that Dina's not gonna go down and show kids how to catch crab and
Never
sail
can tell.
and that. I mean,
Unless
Kelly
you
would,
ask.
I'm not suggesting that she doesn't know how, I'm suggesting that there's no time for that. Nor is there time for the rest of us to do that, but we have a whole community to draw from.
I like the
And it's
idea.
time, I think, for us to make a step forward and have a meeting and start laying the groundwork and how can we go about getting this set up? And then from that point, because there's people in this community, Terry, that have been here for 50 years, that know more history than you and I combined.
Well,
That are
that's-
just dying to be asked something to help out. But I can't expect our staff to do that because they've got plenty to do. We're gonna have to somehow or another coordinate a volunteer system. They're there, I know they're there. It's a retirement community for the most part. There's a lot of retired people that are out there that would love to help. They're just looking for something to do, they have to be asked.
STEP program did it very good, I mean, they took the school kids through
Exactly.
their hatcheries. Maybe it's something, maybe we need to help preserve that opportunity.
Maybe we can get a committee going to where some of them can coordinate with some of the other organizations around and come together and use the board as a nucleus for.
Exactly.
But we need to reach out to the entire district, not
Yes.
just to the city of Florence, because this district is more than Florence. It goes a long way. Most people don't even know it exists until they get their tax statement.
Nancy will show them how to dig clams.
My,
So Mr. Chair, I'd like to, each month, I'd like to have something on an agenda to at least talk about for, just begin, so we don't forget it, so it doesn't get lost.
Well, I see the administrative projects here, to me, that is very important. We need to not lose focus on that. And I don't know what you want to call it, Commissioner Buckwald, public awareness,
Outreach.
committee for public awareness or
Outreach.
outreach.
Well, it could be, yeah, public
Uh,
outreach.
I mean, there's a lot of opportunities there, though, that we could help. Right now, the city of Florence doesn't have a very good view of our Porter's use law, and we need to try to repair some of that.
Friends
That's all
of the
I feel.
port,
Pardon?
friends of the port.
There you go.
And you guys can figure that out when you have the first meeting and talk about it. But I know there's a lot of people out there that are willing to participate.
I agree.
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you, this was a good report, Dina.
You're welcome.
Next on the agenda, review port manager job description and discuss recruitment. This is led by Manager McClure.
Well, just to introduce it, but it is really something that I'm asking your involvement in because I remember a conversation a few months ago that said that when we move forward with the next port manager, you would like to see a few things changed on the port manager description, job description, and I don't really know what that would be, so if you could give me, if you want to go through this, we can. If you have something specific, all we need tonight is your input on how you want this job description revised, and it would require a motion and a vote for any revisions to it. The recruitment process is the way it stands right now is if we were to advertise the position, we usually advertise it on the website, newspaper, SDAO, and employment office. There would be a period of reviewing the applications and creating a short list. There would be the interview process, and then obviously the offer pending a background check. So I just kind of want to turn it over to you for input.
Okay, so is there some timeline that we have to make a decision on this job description tonight? Well, I'm not prepared to do that. This is more important than a lot of things, because I would like to get this job description right this time.
Okay.
And not that I haven't briefly looked at it, but unfortunately, I need to study it.
Okay.
And I need to compare it.
Mhm.
So that's real important for me.
Well, and we don't have to do anything tonight.
Well, I'm
This is
I'm just saying it out loud. It's
Okay.
not necessarily directed just to you, it's just to the board out loud. Because this is, we've had nothing but problems with this job description in the short period of time that I've been here. It's like, whoa, this is not right. And here's an opportunity, along with the ordinances, to fix things and give the port commissioners, the commission as a whole, a little bit of authority. Because, I'm not happy with, and I'm speaking for myself, I'm not happy with the job description in the past, I'm not happy with all the ordinances, because I have been led down the road by people that supposedly know what they're doing. And I need to study this. I'm not prepared to vote on it tonight.
Okay.
No, and I didn't, I reviewed it, but I did not come here tonight anticipating, suggesting any changes. I wasn't sure that was on the agenda.
Well, on the agenda, it says review port manager job description and discuss recruitment.
Okay.
We can take our time on this, we can, come back next month with your input. This is your situation to handle.
Well, I totally concur with what Mike is saying, and one of the things that was valuable that I learned at the training session was the, under 777, the port is free to hire anybody that they need to assist them in managing the port, but there is no statutory description like there is for a school superintendent. There is none. It is totally up to us what we want our employee to do, what we even call them. We could call them chief dishwasher and bottle cleaner. It doesn't matter, but it's up to us to determine the responsibilities. And so I agree with Mike. I'd like to give this some more considered evaluation and be prepared to.
I think as important an issue as this is, I think we need to schedule a work session.
Sure, that's a great idea.
All right.
Because this is, as a board member, this is probably the most important decision.
This can be a ballgame a lot of times.
Yes, and we fouled out the last time.
Well, we didn't have a lot of control over it because a lot of it was in place.
Is this the same criteria we used last time? It definitely needs, the first sentence needs to be replaced. for
Along with this, Dean, and this is, pardon the naivete of the question, but the contract that a port manager signs, is it essentially an outline of these responsibilities?
This is an addendum, this is an exhibit to the contract.
Okay, so this is a subset of the contract. Is the contract itself gonna have additional language related to this or not? Because that contract and this description, those are the two that I wanna carefully evaluate.
Let me email the contract out to the
Okay.
board, so you can take a look at that as well as.
Yeah, the two go hand in hand, absolutely, perfect.
I will do that.
That being said, the conversations I've had with council, which I don't think we're gonna talk about that.
Mhm. Yeah.
We as a board, we can hire someone tomorrow. We can put this up for 1 week. We aren't bound to do this.
No, 777 allows us to, a
Yes,
wide open.
thank you.
Exactly.
But I agree with the two commissioners here, and I haven't had you guys weigh in. We need to do careful consideration. If we're gonna put this out to the public,
Well, this is just our criteria right here.
but it will become part of their contract.
Yeah.
So we wanna make sure if it's part of their contract, that we agree to it as a
So we can
board.
live with it. Yeah. Agreed.
Well,
You have anything to say, Nancy? Do you agree that we need to wait at a work session?
Oh, the work sessions, yes. Yep, we need to hash through so that we can all be on the same page.
you all have different work schedules. Do you want to discuss right now when that work session would be?
After this meeting?
Well, I like an hour before our meeting.
So that would be a month from now. Do you wanna do it before then? You wanna wait another 30 days before you address this? I mean, we can, it's totally up to you.
Are you in a hurry?
No,
Then I can wait until another month. That way, each and every one of us, I think that there's some people that are gonna be busy doing some recreational things between now and next meeting. And
right,
there's odds and ends like that that are occurring.
okay.
And so I just think that it would be beneficial, because I know whoever those people are will be studying this thing while they're away.
Diligently.
Diligently,
Yeah.
and be prepared to discuss it an hour before the next meeting.
All right,
I think an hour before the next meeting will give us plenty of time, and we should all come prepared. to
Yes, it would be great if we all come well prepared to discuss
At
what,
least have some input on an item or two.
not that we'll make a decision then, but we can come, and maybe we can, but we can come prepared.
And just
Okay.
keep working at it.
Yes, yes.
Perfect.
As long as you're not in some drastic hurry.
I'm not.
Good.
And I am glad you're not in a hurry, because one of the things that I was hoping, and it's occurring, is that until you get to see what the manager's responsibilities are and the various tasks that they have to deal with, it makes it more difficult to evaluate and make a proper selection. So the more time I have on the board, the more time I have dealing with the port, the more informed my decision is gonna be in terms of criteria and qualities that we need to look for. So, I'm glad we're not rushing it.
Good. All right. Next item. Commissioner reports, manager reports.
I just only have a couple things since I've told you a lot about the projects. The auditors will be here Friday for field work. And like I told you before, I am working on that letter to the realtors. I already told you that I'm meeting Monday with the ICM manager and contractor. And, boom logs, we are looking for some local replacement boom logs. I'm not sure we're going to find any because our boom logs are in pretty bad shape, but what we have will probably be going into the marina and probably not the boat launch. We usually hold off on that until we know fishing season is over. But November 1st is our target date for putting up, weather permitting. I mean, if the weather's, and staff, how staff can coordinate it. But November 1st is usually our target date for installing the boom logs, and I'll be doing a press release on that. And there was one more thing, but I just forgot what it was and I didn't write it down, so.
You went to that, was it a different conference?
Oh, the OPPA conference, right, yes. Commissioner Meyer and I both attended the Oregon Public Ports Association conference up in Portland. It was very good networking opportunity, got to hear a lot of the legislative updates with the state. Got a phone call in from the federal people in Washington DC with some updates, and the Department of State Lands was there. There was a speaker on cybersecurity, and it was a good opportunity to network with some people at the state and other port managers.
Yeah, I thought it was just very worthwhile, and I appreciate the opportunity to go to it. I thought it was impressive that the head of the Oregon State Lands Commission division, I appreciate a bureaucrat, as he identified himself, looking out to all the port managers and the port commissioners and saying, folks, is there anything that I can do to improve the way you deal with the Oregon State lands, the way you deal with the bureaucracy? Are there any improvements that we can make? And this was the head of the Oregon State Land Division, and that was pretty nice to hear. And then the head of the Oregon Marine Board was there. They talked about the lawsuit going on in Coos Bay, which could have an impact on us, where Oregon State Lands and Coos Bay are battling an environmental lawsuit. The Coos Bay and Oregon State Lands have won at every level, but now it's at the Oregon Supreme Court. And we don't know, naturally, they don't know how it's gonna come out, but right now they won at every level. If they lose, it could have some real ramifications in terms of the bureaucratic processes that we would all have to follow when you do a fill or a borrow from the public waters and near the public waterways. At least that's the way I understand the ramifications of the lawsuit. And then the other, I mentioned earlier, I feel very concerned about Astoria. They have PCBs that are washing into their area underneath their docks. Naturally, they're dealing with the same, they have to remove them, but suddenly this soil that's under their docks contains PCB and probably has drifted in from the Port of Portland or Port of Kalama or who knows where, upriver, but it's coming into their port. And literally, if they have to be the ones that are responsible for mitigating the PCBs, they will not be able to afford. I mean, it's into the millions of dollars, because every cubic yard of dirt that they would remove would be considered contaminated soil and would have to be removed for expensive remediation. So one of the discussions they were is to try to follow the PCB bloom trail to see where these are coming from, because they're not originating in Astoria. But anyway, I'm just sharing a concern I have for another port. It was not a fun story.
Commissioner Rickard, I know you have,
Yeah, I've got three things. I made it to a city council meeting, and the city had a special forum on housing and jobs. That was quite interesting, breaking into tables, different discussion groups about what people in Florence can do to help with the housing need, what can be done with job and people available to do the jobs. And then I went to Elaine at the transportation meeting. And those are good because they go out of their way to make sure that Florence is included in all of these transportation things, and the port. Even though we don't have anything with jobs, we benefit from some of the things that come through there, that come to Florence. That's where the trail is funded, is through that with the STIP, the transportation thing. So I feel it's worth my while to go to those and make them keep knowing that Florence is here, the port's there, that we do that. So that's what I did this month.
good. David?
No fishing report, David?
No,
No.
it hasn't been worth.
Mike?
I stay home, no.
Well, you still might have a report.
No, I'm.
Is there any fish in front of your house?
Yes, there is. They're not biting, but they are.
He lives up the river. Any of you want to know?
But he has a paddle.
Yeah, he's got more to paddle.
Okay.
We have room for
I I only got one ear, I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Yeah, do you have any public comment? We're asking for public comment at the end
I
of the
like
meeting.
what Mike came up with, to take your time with the, job description for the port manager. That's a real good idea. I think it's something that really needs your attention, Dan.
And you need to look at more than just the port manager's job description. You need to look at
No.
everybody, every staff, and all of their job descriptions, because it isn't maintenance one or anything.
That would be the job of the port manager,
Yeah.
to revise or not revise. Although I concur, I think we need to talk to a new port manager. Are you willing to revise?
Put it in their job description.
Yes, we can, and that's something we will discuss. Michelle, thank you. Any other questions, problems? Let's close the public meeting. Thank you.
Good job, Terry.
Thank you.